Okay, hello, welcome everyone. We've snuck in one last webinar this decade. Marketing are sitting opposite me right now and cursing the fact that we've halted the festive celebrations to get this promoted. And but onto the good stuff. If you've got any audio issues at any point during this webinar, if you can use the GoToWebinar panel, which is most likely on the right-hand side of your screen, to let us know, then we can sort that out. Also, if you've got any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to ask those during the question panel and we'll get those answered right at the end. We've also got a poll and a video and some interesting stats, haven't we, Jamie? So there's a lot to get through and hope everyone gets involved and we'll get some feedback on everything as well. Without further ado, we'll do a little introduction. So my name is Ben Edwards. I'm the Business Development Director here at PageSuite, and I work with publishers big and small right across the world. I can see a number of people who I work with on the line, which is great. Mainly discuss with them how digital and mobile products can help with customer acquisition, retention, and when it comes to subscription strategies and also driving digital advertising revenues. And increasingly, I guess, also looking at spin-off brands like puzzle apps or games or OTT solutions right across the full range of devices and platforms.
I'm Jamie Ollie, our digital mobile specialist at PageSuite. I work closely with Ben, many of our UK and European clients. Also, I work with many of our clients who are potentially, looking at utilising our SDK within the apps that they build.
Perfect. So what have we got in this webinar? The upgrade of the ePaper SDK this year has actually been really important for us, and it's allowed more publishers than ever to deliver a higher quality digital edition experience in their own branded live news apps. You can see actually an implementation of that on the right hand side to actually give you a feel for what our SDK can do. It essentially gives you the power and the control to put in a digital edition within your own branded product. So what we'll do, we'll start with a little bit of light statistics on what's happening in the mobile world. We'll go into a little bit more on competition, user habits, and app engagement. And then we're going to start making some conclusions about maybe why you should go for one big app, maybe join your live news feed and digital edition app together. And also, why not? Why would you actually still keep them separate? And then we'll actually look at some nice solutions and clients who are utilizing our SDK. So that's brands like Newsday on Long Island in America. You've also got LA Times, West Coast of America, and then multiple media house brands who I know you work quite closely with, Jamie, in different markets in Central Europe. And then because of the SDK's flexibility, we're actually going to cover off a few new features and that publishers can maximize that nobody else has yet as well. And that, like I said, there's the Q&A. So if you've got any questions at all, fire those in and we'll ask them, get them answered right at the end. So the mobile world, if we look at the first graph on the right-hand side, it's the orange and blue one. It shows the split between desktop, mobile, and tablet usage across 13 different markets. It's actually only France where desktop touches half of all of the usage. In the UK and the US, there's a very similar 30-60-10 split, which is the split between desktop, mobile, and then tablet. But as you can see more on the right-hand side, there's swathes of the world who've got next to no or minimum tablet exposure or usage, and then mobile is smashing desktop, which for us, is with our global client base, with people like South China Morning Post, you've got clients in Malaysia, right? And we do things in Australia, Philippines Star, Australasia, Africa, South America. We also have that breadth of client base. So all of this is very interesting for us outside of your more traditional European and North American markets. There's 1.8 million iOS apps currently in store and 2.1 million Android apps. But our research has actually shown that only around 3,000 of each of those generates over $1 million a year. So very competitive world with very small margins of success. And on both the iOS and the Android side of things, games, education, and utilities, which is the middle bottom graph there, which include Messenger apps, shows that it's taken up nearly 40% of all of the app usage. More towards the bottom of the number of apps, in that middle graph, you'll see news, books, and catalogs, which may be more relevant to people on this call. They might look like a low volume, but actually that's still thousands of apps within those individual categories. The last graph, bottom right, is statistics from App Annie from 2018. It's data all around how much time people are spending on their smart devices, and between 3 and 4 hours seem to be the average across the different markets. But actually, you yourselves will have, if you've got an iPhone, see the screen time now, and I'm sure that is increasing in 2019.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to see from that graphic that Europe is the amount of time spent on per device is actually lower than across other parts of the world. So I think obviously what it shows is for publishers that potentially, because the time is less, how do we, add value to the apps that we have to make sure that that time's maximised?
Nice. So it's very competitive, and the graph that we can see bottom left with the green graphics is really interesting, because it shows that you really need to be loved by your customers to gain any sort of traction. App users spend 77% of their time in their top 3 apps, and 96% of all time is spent within a user's top 10 apps. So if you're outside of that, you've got next to no chance of getting the engagement levels that you need. The second graph also provides some context, which is the graph on the top right with the light purple and the blue bar graphs. And that shows that for publishers, you're facing reality where social media, messenger apps, retail games, and even increasingly banking and finance and other entertainment products ahead potentially of where you want to be. So you need to realize that there's more and more apps ahead of you in terms of the engagement. So if you want to have a high engagement, high value product, pushing features and functionality into that is an important way to go, which is why the SDK starts to become a little bit more relevant, because it allows you to maybe not have a fragmented app strategy and bundling it all together. You've got a better chance of getting one of your apps into your users' top 10 than 2 or 3, as some publishers have apps. We've also found some data, which is the graph at the bottom right with the orange, blue, and purple bar graphs. And that shows how the categories themselves translate into individual markets. So there might be people on the call from South America or North America. You can see how it's relevant for your individual market. But broadly speaking, the US, France, Germany, and Canada users have high engagement in games and entertainment, whilst places in like Brazil, Malaysia, and India, broadly speaking, their users are much more focused on messenger and social media type applications. There are changing user habits as well that we want to be looking at. Users are now very happy to try an app once and then can it almost immediately. So if you look at the graph on the bottom left, which is the monthly average number of apps used and installed during 2018, it shows that the Japanese, US, UK, French, South Korean, and German users, these are markets that all have very mobile, mature markets, have customers with over 90 apps installed, but less than 40 are used every month. But as we saw from the earlier statistics on the last slide, only a handful actually make up over 90% of that usage. So most of those 40 will actually only be touched once or twice in a month, which for publishers is not going to be enough, given the relatively low volumes that you get coming to your apps, to either drive ad revenue if you've got a free base model, or provide subscribers with enough value. There was a period we had in 2016, 2017, when we saw integrations with partners like Airship and other push notification providers that we use to reactivate subscriptions or users. But push doesn't really have that type of effect as effectively anymore. It's more now used for breaking news rather than to drive reinstallations or reactivations. The data on the right hand side is from eMarketer, and it's only UK data, but it's still very interesting to present and for you to look at, because it shows that even in the past 3 years and predicted in the next 2 years, media consumption is changing dramatically. Broadly, we all know that print decline is occurring, but the drop in TV is even sharper. Now, that's because of OTT and the fact that people are now consuming on smart devices. But media companies could actually maximize that crossed opportunity there of the smartphone growth in black and the TV drop in red to potentially provide more high value video content to their subscribers. There's also questions that we get asked in meetings around, is there such a thing as subscription fatigue? Are people becoming bored about having multiple subscriptions? I actually have found the opposite, and the fact that customers are now really used to having multi-platform subscriptions from whether it's video like Netflix, or whether it's audio like Spotify and Apple Music, to actually even delivery with things like Amazon, and retail and food are now looking at subscription type offerings as well, that publishers can maximize the perception that customers have got more reality and used to dealing with subscriptions and having subscriptions.
Yeah, and I think the fact that people have different devices nowadays as well, the subscription enables the publisher to basically make it available across, you know, all the platforms quite seamlessly, and I think, you know, that's quite important as well.
So app engagement. Apps have often and still are a, relatively speaking, low volume play, but really high engagement and very high loyalty if you get it right. So if you take an average large metropolitan US paper, for instance, they might be getting 20 to 30,000 daily users, which equates to maybe 50,000 uniques every week, and there might be 80,000 every month. If you compare that to the website, which is getting millions of impressions, and even if you compare that to a print product that's getting hundreds of thousands of purchases. So the volumes are relatively low, but the engagement is significantly higher. Even on mobile, we see in excess of 10 to 15 minutes, and on tablet it's 20 to 25 plus. Compare that to the average traction that people get through a website visit. If it's driven through Facebook or through Twitter, it might only be a minute and a half. Even direct website traffic is significantly lower. So really, app and the engagement potential that offers your subscribers is key to any stop, save, subscriber program. It's a premium solution that will bolster any move to paid for content, and also importantly in a lot of markets protect those high value print subscribers. Giving them a really premium mobile or tablet app experience can only help protect and retain those high value print subscribers as well. One nice graph we found was actually relating to apps popularity during the day, which is the graph bottom right. Love the fact that during the morning session, current affairs and news apps are way ahead of any other app, part of people's routine, and we find that with the e-paper, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think obviously as well with the being able to include an e-paper within, say, your news app brings quite a lot to the user, because you're bringing potentially two audiences together. We'll come to that a bit later on, but obviously like web articles and news-based articles, obviously people go back to them more frequently, but you know, they might spend every visit, look at 3 or 4 articles, you know, spending 2 or 3 minutes per article per visit, and then you've lost them to whatever they're doing. Where with the e-paper, the engagement is much higher, although it's such a small audience. So it's, you know, bringing them together adds quite a lot of value.
Yeah, and that allows you to cover those peaks and the troughs during the day. E-paper, very popular during the morning, but then if you've got your own live newsfeed app or using one of ours, 2-in-1 type products, if you've got breaking news coverage during the day, you're still hitting that sweet spot of wanting that user engagement in a single branded environment. Okay, so we're going to look at maybe a couple of reasons why not to go for one big app first, although our belief is that well, it's demonstrated by the fact we're seeing a lot of client requests for it, but there are still some use cases why not to go for one big app. So if you've got distinctly different audiences, there's definitely still a feeling with clients that I go to see that they want that some want to keep that different. They see the e-paper or the digital edition users maybe a little bit more mature, and then the live newsfeed type products maybe for a younger demographic who want things a little bit more instantaneously. And actually putting those together, it's not a meeting of two worlds that is really something they want to do. There's also has been the challenge of distinctly different revenue models. So the live newsfeed apps tend to be a little bit cheaper or free and monetized for advertising, and the editions or e-paper tend to be locked down or paid for. And actually combining those two presented a bit of a challenge, but that's an obstacle we can overcome now.
Yeah.
And there's also other revenue models at play. So it might be a paid for download. It might be user access rather than for subscriptions.
Yeah, also there's things like auditing as well.
Yeah.
So in Central Europe, we see that actually for the circulation figures, the e-paper has to be just the e-paper and a true representation of that, nothing else inside the app. to count towards those figures. So actually, the challenge for some publishers is, okay, if I incorporate it into one big app, it won't count towards my circulation figures. But again, I think that's sort of changing as well.
I remember when we launched digital editions, there was a fear from publishers that digital editions and apps would cannibalize the print audience without really a recognition that print audiences were already declining. And now we're up against a new fear, and that's that if you combine the apps, those edition or e-paper users who previously have paid more premium fees would see the same type of content in the live news feed, which tends to be cheaper, and go to that. So there's a fear that from publishers that by combining the apps, they're actually going to lose revenue. We've not seen any demonstrable evidence that has happened, because people who love the e-paper and the edition will stick with it as they have done for the last 10 or 15 years, and they'll continue paying the higher rates than traditionally live news feed apps will have. We're also seeing publishers move much more towards either a very slimly metered model or a harder type paywall approach, in which case the live news feed elements are going behind the paywall anyway. So if you're combining that type of content with an e-paper content, it's all behind a paywall. Make that user journey more intuitive. They don't have to log into different products. You log into one. And the other element is that goes with that fear is the internal challenges. There are obstacles that we face about, we've got this entrenched tech stack, we've got this CMS that powers the live newsfeed app, we can't change that, or we've got these processes that we can't go against. That's another obstacle that we have to overcome, but publishers really need to look beyond that if they want to deliver a better customer experience.
Yeah, and I think Ben's exactly right. A lot of the obstacles with combining it sort of comes with publishers using different systems for different products. So, actually using one solution for your news app and one for your e-paper, it's actually quite a big job bringing them together. So I think that's obviously, the worry for some of the groups, I guess.
But that's where the SDK comes into its own.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not having to put a square peg in a round hole. You can use something that's market leading, best in class. The code's written, you can bundle it into your live newsfeed product, and away you go. So why should you look at combining your products and maybe going to one larger app solution? We've looked at the data around the number of apps that customers are using, so that points you in the direction that you've got a better likelihood of gaining traction and success with one rather than two. There's also the internal element about your marketing teams maybe spending money to acquire customers or retain customers in two completely different directions for two different products. Combining that marketing effort with a single point of reference should enable both of those acquisition and retention strategies to come better into play. App Store ranking as well, by splitting up your apps, you're splitting up the number of downloads, the number of regular usage, and even the reviews as well that are important in powering you up the App Store rankings, making yourselves look more credible.
And with brand dilution, one of the, that's another important part. A lot of publishers say to us, actually, when they're looking at potentially adopting the SDK, is it's normally a situation where they've got two different styles of apps. And they say, well, the problem we've got is, where do the users go for their news? Is it the e-paper app or is it the news app? It's two different audiences, but actually, which one gets the which one gets the news? So if you've got it in one place, it sort of squashes that straight away.
There's a lot less brand dilution in that respect, isn't there? And easier for new customers coming to the brand to understand which app product they have to download and what they use. With split apps as well, you've got very limited upsell opportunities, whereas if you combine all of your app products, you've got opportunities to meter in there. You've got the opportunity to upsell your digital editions or editions to people who maybe aren't even aware that it exists. Just the fact that you've got a more visual representation of it within your app product will lead people to it. And obviously you can prioritize where you put our SDK. You can even put it front and center of the home screen if you want, to try and drive as much opportunities for upsell. And then the final point is around dedicated development resource. So this is more down to the fact that using a best-in-class e-paper actually will take the pressure off your IT team, so they can better focus in on delivering optimizations for the core product, for the website, and you can use a trusted vendor or supplier for the e-paper component.
And I think with your development resource, it enables you to bring that control back in-house. So, if you want control of your app you know, you haven't got to use a different supplier for, say, the e-paper part. You can develop your own app and actually plug in, as Ben said, market leading e-paper into that to, you know, help your dev teams.
Okay, so the solutions that we've got live, some of the bigger brands that people will recognise are shown at the bottom there. So we're working with different paywall solutions, both internally and third parties as well. So you can have part paid, part free models in play. You can meter your digital edition, both in terms of the number of pages being consumed or the amount of time being spent in it.
I think the key thing with that as well is, you know, with the SDK parts, that part's all handled your side as well. So essentially, when we deliver the SDK to you, it can just fit in line with the model of the rest of the app.
Yeah. Also, we've provided opportunities for a really simple navigation. So if you do have concerns about the distinctly different user base, it needn't be confusing within the app environment. There's a number of ways that you can position it. You can have the front cover in the scrollable section. You can have it as a lockdown element, maybe on the bottom navigation bar as Newsday have, so you can just toggle between the two. There's a number of different ways in which you can control the user journey using the SDK. We've also found, and this comes from some user groups that we've been a part of from a client perspective, which is really interesting insight, that users see it as completing the premium product offering. They really see it as a huge value add to the most premium of their subscriptions, which is what publishers are increasingly having to really tightly hold on to. Great going out and trying to acquire new customers, but if you can reduce that churn even by a couple of percentage points every year, that's going to add, you know, significant revenues to the bottom line, which is all important going forwards. You know, there's qualitative and quantitative data about existing and retention of customers, and utilizing that in a successful way that we've seen from our customers. Obviously, the type of data we can't publicly make available, but you only have to look at how those brands are doing in terms of subscriptions to recognize that that's been an important effect.
Yeah, and essentially you can say to the user or subscriber, you view our content in the way that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, giving them a choice.
Yeah, exactly, as opposed to you download one app or the other.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite a powerful tool, especially for on, you know, the retention side as well.
Okay, so we're going to show you some live examples now of how publishers have implemented our SDK. First off, I'm going to do the video and show you some of the features, and then Jamie's going to talk you through more of the strategic side in a minute. But, oh, excuse me, I have skipped. Go back. Okay, great. So LA Times loading. You launch the app, this is the tablet product, and you can jump straight into the e-paper from the home screen using the bottom navigation bar. You can scroll through the replica version, you can pinch to zoom, or you can tap and get the optimized article experience. You've got the increased text size option available. You've got the options to share that content as well, but if it's behind a paywall, you can be locked. You've got the option to print the content, which we know a lot of North American customers really love doing with the puzzles. They've customized their menu as well, which is the little floating menu bottom right. You can jump straight through to different sections, and you can scroll through the page navigation using the SDK as well. If you've got supplements, jump to that too. You can download the edition. So lots of our customers choose to actually offer the users the ability, option to read the content on the fly and have the download as a background tool, and that's how the LA Times have implemented it there. You've got the archive section as well that allows you to scroll through 30 days, but that could go up into the years or decades if you have that, and really add value to the subscription opportunity as well. There's a little help guide, and the menu can actually be moved around, which is a really nice piece of user engagement that the LA Times have implemented to allow that slight piece of customization for each reader.
Yeah, great. So following on from that, Ben, I think obviously you can see the visuals now on screen. I think what you can see from that is you've got the front screen, as you can see on the first graphic, that the menu's sort of positioned towards the top right. That's just sort of to illustrate that as that can be moved around the page. That was a customization done by LA. Also, you've got the second visual is around a customized section front, which obviously can be done as well. So essentially we provide you with the SDK package, and your developers can create customized screens like what you see there, you know, to display your content in the way that you want. Also, the third one sort of shows the menu as well itself. The SDK comes complete with all the features you'd expect with the e-paper, as Ben said. Things like download today's edition, page selection, section selection, page navigation, everything you would expect with that. And also, the next one you can see is the archive screen. So again, that was customized based on the publisher's preferred display in this case. And then the last visual just sort of shows how they've adopted the paywall. So essentially, initially you get like a free trial, and then they've adopted so that it pops up after a certain amount of time, to subscribe directly to the e-paper part of the app.
And what's really nice is each client that we work with brands it completely differently. So it's got all of the LA Times type fonts. It's got their, quite traditional black, white and grey color schemes, and that just adds an element of customization that we at PageSuite allow our customers to do. So it's not just an off-the-shelf SDK. As we can see here with Media House too, they've customized it with their own user interface as well.
Yeah, and so basically with Media House, it's a nice way of showing the different way the SDK can be used. So in the presentation up until now, we've spoken a lot about how you can incorporate it within a news app, where the use case of Media House is slightly different. They take our SDK and put it alongside a tablet optimized version or a mobile optimized version of their newspaper. So it's an exact like for like of the content, but they're just giving the user the choice to either view the optimized version or the replica. So a slightly different use case, but it just shows essentially that flexibility in terms of what it gives your development teams. You can essentially take the SDK package and integrate it into an app where appropriate.
And there's some slightly interesting things that Media House have to do from an audit perspective from there. Their pop-up articles, instead of being swipeable through, you have to force close because of the audit rules in Belgium and Holland. The SDK allows even that minutiae of requirement to be implemented quite successfully as well. They've also got a user experience on their optimized edition where you have to download the content first to be able to view it, and although ours you can read on the fly, they actually disabled that so the customers get exactly the same user experience, and still the replica is very popular.
And I think with the SDK as well, when we release it obviously to a publisher, we can have as little or as much involvement as you want in terms of customization. So in some cases we've had it where we've basically provided the publisher with the SDK and their development team has just taken it and implemented it.
Yeah.
And then others we've worked more closely on developing those customization parts to get it exactly how they want. So we can take sort of whatever approach is preferred, really.
So Newsday is a long-standing client of ours. We started off just by doing their e-paper for Android. That snowballed, and now we do a huge amount of custom work with them for their new mobile device, new apps, their tablet apps. We've even done smart TV, smart watch, you name it. Newsday have done it with us, and they've also got our e-paper component in there as well, which is very popular. It's got a branded user interface with their blues and their whites and their type fonts. They've got a different implementation of the archive because they've got a number of years worth of archive, and they've also got their classic editions, which is key moments in time, such as the moon landing. They digitize that edition and embellish it with rich media. They also do any time a sports team from their region wins, and they create these classic versions that are toggleable and drive huge amounts of subscriber engagement. They've got zoning, so that depending on whereabouts in Long Island you are, you get a slightly different version via the SDK. And they've got rich media pop-ups, which you can see on the fourth visual there, where we take rich video content and also image galleries and display as part of the article pop-out, which is a really nice engaging feature of the e-paper as well. So those are 3 in-market examples of the SDK in practice. All of them have helped the publisher drive subscription strategies, and also I'm sure advertising revenues as well are part of it too. But if you're looking at moving to a more harder product, if you're looking at better retaining subscribers, then really the SDK is a nice solution to be able to discuss with us. This piece, we're actually just going to, before we finish the webinar and take the questions, we're just going to quickly look at what we're doing in 2020. So most recently, we announced the launch of the Dallas Morning News' evening edition, which allows them to create a wholly digitally optimized afternoon evening product for subscriber only. So the e-paper gets delivered to subscribers both in app and on the web every morning, and customers engage with that. But as an added bonus, they now have the option to read a cover to cover digital edition experience, which is curated by the editorial team. I think it looks great. I think some of the early feedback from the publisher has been really positive. It's a really interesting model, and glad to see that go live before the end of this year. And we've got a number of other clients launching Q1 next year. We've got the Daily Express who've gone live in the UK with a puzzles edition, and they've got the article pop out as part of the edition platform, and a number of others as well. And most recently on the live news feed side, we had Exec Grapevine go live today, I believe, on our latest live news feed platform, which is a really nice XML driven.
Yeah, no replica.
No, yeah.
So just completely feed driven, but again, you have the option to sort of just drop the replica in if you want to.
And they've got personalization there as well, so people can
Yep.
choose their favorite sections. Any other nice features or functions in that release?
It's mainly for an app for professionals, so they can choose what topics they want,
Yeah.
interest, that type of thing. There'll be, I think, additional
Releases going forward as well.
Yeah. But yeah.
But this is the basis for our own two-in-one type, more off-the-shelf app product, isn't it? So if you maybe are a small or medium-sized publisher and you want to get up and running with a live newsfeed app and have e-paper in there, it's this product that's now our latest reference point, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's built in Flutter as well. I've been reliably informed by the development team, which is like the latest programming language. You know all about that, Jamie. Okay, so that is the end of the One Big App SDK focused webinar, and I would invite any of you who've got any questions to ask those now. We've got a couple in actually. So first one is how customizable is the SDK? I mean, literally every element of it can be changed, right? So page navigation, where the menu sits, the downloads, the sections, all of that can be tweaked using the documentation that we've got on iOS and Android, can't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next question is, oh no, what does SDK stand for? I actually know this, Jamie. Do you? Software development kit. Yes, there we go. So the SDK is a software development kit. Essentially, it's a bundle of code that we provide your development team, and they put it within your own app framework, and it allows you to access all of the features and functions within the SDK. Okay, another question. If you're a publisher, how long does it typically take to implement the SDK? Do you want me to take that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of real life examples. We've got a couple of large publishers, and they each had an iOS and Android development resource, and it took between 7 and 10 days to customize how they wanted on each platform, which is not an unreasonable length of time given the length of customizations that they implemented. So I would also say for any major brand, or if you've got multiple publications, to allow yourself a week to 2 weeks development resource for each platform, because you're not just going to want to go with the plain vanilla SDK. You are going to want to add your branding in, have a little bit of a tweak with some of the features and functions.
Well.
Yeah, exactly. You want to test it as well. Very good point. But hypothetically, you could just take the SDK for iOS and Android, put it into your app, and get up and running with the default page speed version, couldn't you?
Yep.
So it's not just as a sort of like how long is a piece of string type answer. And the other thing is that you mentioned earlier that's important is most publishers we work with, we don't just give it to them and the documentation and say go run with it. We will have a number of development calls. Sometimes we go on site for a day or two to actually help implement it as well as part of that sort of consultation phase. because we wanted it implemented
Yeah.
nicely as well. Okay, so I think that is all of the questions. If there's anything else that comes to mind after the webinar, please feel free to get in contact with me or Jamie. If you're an existing PageStreet customer with your account manager, if you're new to us, then sales@pagestreet.com and we can get that sent. We are going to be sending this out to everybody who's registered, and that's it for 2019 and the decade. Yeah, we're good. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thank you.
Really appreciate it. Have a great Christmas. Oh, the tune's back. Elton's back. Have a great Christmas. Happy New Year, and speak to you all in 2020. Go on, Jamie, sing it.